The results produced by Dan Lanning in his first year at Oregon were unexpected, but most importantly, they were very significant. And we're not just talking about the way that they finished last year with a strong bowl performance, multiple big wins throughout the course of the season, and then most importantly, a recovery from the embarrassing opening loss that they suffered against the University of Georgia. But more importantly, they're winning in recruiting, they're winning in the transfer portal, and this roster right now is one of the most talented in all of the Pac-12, putting them in a position to be competing for a Pac-12 championship by the end of the season. I point to one major sign of why I believe they're going to have massive, massive success in 2023. And it's one that I think last year at the start of last season, most people thought it was a weakness. And I'm talking specifically about Bo Nix. Bo Nix was a shell of himself in his time at Auburn. He transitions to Oregon, and last year he really started to come along. Kenny Dillingham, who was the offensive coordinator at the time and is now the head coach at Arizona State, he set up Bo Nix to succeed without really any massive elite playmakers around him. They do have Bucky Irving, who is a quality running back. They do have Troy Franklin, who is a productive but not a 1,000-yard receiver. But he was able to unlock what makes Bo Nix a good quality starting college football quarterback. Very accurate on short to intermediate routes, quick decision maker, and also a good athlete that can expand the pocket. Now for 2023, even though Kenny Dillingham is gone, I still believe he's going to be just fine in the hands of Will Stein, who was one of the best and most productive offensive coordinators in all of college football in his time at UTSA. But as I mentioned before, the transfer portal success that they had is what is going to prepare them and propel them further in 2023. They pulled a ton of really elite athletes across the board throughout the whole transfer portal period. But the three that stand out to me the most that they managed to pull were first, they managed to grab Jordan Burch from South Carolina. There is, speculation on why he chose to leave. Is he still the same level of athlete and recruit as he was when he was coming out of high school? But for a team that didn't have a guy who had over 6 sacks last year, adding Jordan Burch into the equation is going to make their defense even stronger. They also added an elite offensive tackle in Johnny Cornelius, who came from Rhode Island. Fantastic athlete, smooth mover, who is going to bolster an already strong offensive line that had a really good year last year. And then the last one is one that I don't think has been talked enough at all throughout the transfer portal process, is Justin Jacobs, who that they grabbed from Iowa, who is in a rangy, explosive linebacker who was pigeonholed in a very specific pass coverage heavy role in his time at Iowa. And I think he is going to be unlocked by Dan Lanning in 2023. With all that being said, though, how are they going to do? As we've done so far, let's take a look at their schedule and predict what their record will be in 2023. So they have a pretty favorable start to the season. Their first 5 games feature matchups that are all relatively winnable. Most of them are pretty easy to win, but I think a good amount of them also could be momentum building victories because of who some of these opponents are. They start off playing Portland State. They're not a super competitive FCS opponent. By the way, I have to now point out, if I say this is a nice test for an FCS opponent, or the viewers on this channel for some reason take me very, very literally when I make that statement. If an FCS opponent is a test, all it means is that they have good, well-coached athletes that are going to actually put up a little bit of a fight, and you're not just showing up and taking them for granted. You actually have to put a little bit of an effort in to beat them in the first quarter. It helps prepare your team for later on in the season with a game like this. This is why you schedule these types of FCS opponents. Portland State, though, mid-tier. Coach Barnum has set them up to be competitive, but aren't in the upper echelon of FCS. But regardless, that is a first victory to set them up 1-0 at the beginning of the season. They then travel to play at Texas Tech, and I think Texas Tech is certainly a bit of a wild card in 2023. There is a lot of potential for them and their capabilities of what they can do, especially offensively. I don't know if they're just there just yet. I think there's still a couple waves of recruiting that needs to happen before they reach where they can actually be. So let's give a victory there for Oregon, because I think their defense is going to step up in this one, giving them that 2-0 record at the beginning of the season. They take on Hawaii at home. Hawaii is just the cliche, schedule them, easy victory, 3-0 record after your first 3 games. Colorado. I know that a lot of people are optimistic for what Colorado can do. They are nowhere near good enough to compete with Oregon. And frankly, this should be a very lopsided victory for the Oregon Ducks, giving them that 4-0 record. Traveling to go play at Stanford. I'm high on what Troy Taylor is going to do in his first year, but it's not going to be enough to beat Oregon, then placing Oregon with a 5-0 record with a victory over them. Here comes their first losable game, their first test. They have to go on the road to play at Washington. Sucks that they have to go on the road just by a slight close margin. I think that Washington is going to edge out Oregon in this game, giving Oregon their first loss. I think that they are just a slightly more well-rounded roster. I think they have a better offensive line. They have better defensive playmakers, especially along the defensive line. Again, those small margins are going to be enough for Washington to beat them, placing Oregon with a 5-1 record after this game. They then take on Washington State at home. Cam Ward is fun, but not enough to beat Oregon. 6-1 record as Oregon beats them. They then travel on the road to take on Utah at Utah. I am not as high on Utah and Cam Rising, as many people know, as I think the general public is. They're almost the Iowa of the Pac-12, where they're really good defensively. Sometimes they're good enough offensively. They get the job done. They're just well coached. And for whatever reason, when you show up to go play them, it's like stepping into a void to have to take on, like you're in a vacuum trying to play against Utah. That being said, though, I think that this is a year that Oregon, despite getting that loss to Washington is going to still have a ton of momentum and be a really just dominant force, that they're across the board just a more athletic, explosive team than Utah. So let's give them a victory there, giving him that 7-1 record. California, I'm not afraid of Cal. I don't think anyone's afraid of Cal. 8-1 record with a victory over Cal. They then take on USC at home, and I was really battling with myself on what I thought that the outcome was going to be for this game. As much as I'm not in on USC as much as the general public is, I think that Caleb Williams is enough, as we've seen, to secure unexpected victories. Because if it's a close game, his improvisational skills, his arm talent, all of that stuff, the Heisman traits, he checks every box. All of that is enough to win a close game. This game is going to be close, and as much as it pains me, I think that USC wins this football game. That then gives them an 8-2 record. Their last two games at Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, former offensive coordinator. That roster is barren. 9-1 record, beating Arizona State on the road. And then lastly, Oregon State at home. Helps that they're at home. I think that Oregon State has a very underrated roster. They're a very underrated team. And I think by the end of the season, they're definitely going to be ranked. But I don't see them on that same competitive level as Oregon. And I know that Oregon State stole this game last year, but Oregon got a lot better this offseason. So I think that Oregon beats out Oregon State in this game, giving them a final record of 10-2. Where do you think I'm wrong? Drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done differently in predicting their upcoming record. I just want to tell you folks about an exciting new partnership that we have with this channel with Underdog Fantasy. Ever since I joined, I've been having so much fun. There are so many different exciting games that make watching games during the offseason more exciting. I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but it has made it way more entertaining since I found Underdog Fantasy. And my favorite game to play so far, which I think you should try out, is Pick'em. It is so easy to play. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your Pick'em slip, get every pick right, and take home some cold, hard cash. Use code HACK, H-A-C-K, HACK, like the name of this channel. Use code HACK to get your first deposit doubled up to $100 by Underdog. Go sign up. You won't regret it. You're going to have a blast. Check out Underdog Fantasy. I also want to tell you folks about our other recurring sponsor that we have on this channel, that being BetOnline, betonline.ag, which is all the updated odds, news, and anything for sports betting. It's my go-to source for when I want to be betting specifically on games. I love betting on college basketball or the NBA, especially, again, during the offseason. Always looking for more fun ways to be focused in on some of these other sports. It's betonline.ag and use promo code BELIEVE50. It's promo code BELIEVE50 to get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.